Well, it is the 18th day of September 2014. Thank you for making time to join us on KTN Prime. Now, we all come from different communities, and in our communities, we have different beliefs and practices. Tonight on KTN Prime, we will be telling you why some of those practices may need to come to an end.
Also tonight, the people of Scotland did go to the polls to cast their ballot to determine whether or not Scotland should secede from the United Kingdom. Tonight, we shall be taking a look at the repercussions were the yes proponents to have their way and end the 300-year union.
This indeed will be big for the United Kingdom, will it?
It will be big indeed, Linda. And by the time the Big Ben chimes 7:30 a.m. UK time, the world will be knowing if indeed the kingdom is still united.
I'm Linda Gutu. Many thanks for joining us. Our sign language interpreter at the bottom end of your screen is Meresha Owiti.
And I'm Ben Kitili. These are the top stories tonight.
Nduku. Alafu mtoto yako akucha ape mtoto yangu mimba. Huyo wanaua.
In the nick of time, Bukusu elders stopped from killing child born out of incest.
We are the elders of Migori, are therefore here today to profoundly apologize to you.
Kutoka tuanze safari yetu ya kwamba wananchi wa Migori hawakuwa na shida. Tafadhali okoa Jaluo, okoa Mkuria, okoa Maragoli.
You are forgiven. President Uhuru accepts Migori people's apology over heckling. Why Kisii residents chased away a magistrate and scattered a mobile traffic court.
I lost my job because of false reports.
Terror cell or innocent youth at the wrong place. The story of Majengo Mosque. Well, let's begin in Bungoma County, and a section of Bukusu elders was stopped in the nick of time as they were about to order the killing of a 3-day-old child.
Now, apparently the child was born out of an incestuous relationship between a man and his niece, and according to Bukusu culture, such children have no place in the society.
KTN's Catherine Omwanzo brings us this disturbing story.
Had the KTN crew got to Maini village in Bungoma County a moment later, we would be telling a different story. This 3-day-old baby has ignited a rather strange debate in Western Kenya. Residents say the child was born out of an incestuous relationship between a man and his niece. According to the Bukusu culture, the child is an abomination and should be killed.
Wawe mtoto, manene ekuichi, samani walikuwa wanafanya namna hiyo. Kama mimi, na wewe, nduku. Alafu mtoto yako akucha ape mtoto yangu mimba. Huyo wanaua. Huyo waruswa.
The alleged father of the child ran off when he got wind that his niece was pregnant. By law, the father of the child is culpable and can even be charged with statutory rape since the child's mother is only 17 years old.
Hiyo ruswa. Hiyo ruswa berange.
Unajua kunalisababisha ni mzazi wake mwenyewe, si mtoto. Mtoto achakosea. Unaona hapo? Sasa ukiua mtoto utakuwa unafanya kitendo ambacho hakitakikani. Ile mtoto achakosa, mzazi ndiye amekosa, Unaona hapo?
Sasa uwe kijana.
While some elders believe the couple and the child should be punished for the unnatural act, others believe that such cultural practices belong in the past.
Wanaua wote, samani. Lakini vile Kristo alikuja, hiyo hakuna. Kristo alishambulia hapo, alichambua hapo. Kuja ni kuwasamea na kufanya sadaka ile iko, na wanaleta maombi kuwaombea na kuwasamea, na mambo hiyo inakwisha. Kristo anamaliza.
Some Bukusu men were honest enough to admit that children born out of incest can be killed in various ways.
Watasema mtoto anakufa malaria. Kweli kusema kupima, watapima malaria. Lakini kitu wenye wanapatia wanataka atoke kwa inji hiyo. Sasa inji hiyo ya Wabukusu waachana.
As the debate rages on, even those against killing the child would not help the mother.
Saa hii maneno yenye yuko serikali iende kana mtoto. Usikubali. serikali iende kae na mtoto. Hiyo maisha hiyo ndio tutafanya. Mtoto huyo atasoma pale Amerika. Lakini maneno mengine hata kutanganya nyenye hata mtu yenye anasema ati mimi nitakaa naye wapi? Wataua hii mtoto.
Neither the child nor the mother has been allowed back home, but they are safe.
Tuone njia ya kulea huyu mtoto mdogo. Tusiingie kwa hiyo mambo ya kimela na kadhalika na kiumbe iko na ni hai.
They are currently under police protection until she gets back on her feet. The mother and the child may be forced to relocate altogether. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Hey, I'm just as puzzled as you are. Our hashtag tonight, of course, is connected to that story. It's Poor Bukusu Baby. Share your opinion on that story. What do you think about the story? In the next few minutes, I will be speaking to Wabwoba Walinywa. He is a Bukusu elder, to try and find some of the answers that many of you could be having. Why must this child die? That's coming your way in a few minutes. But first, let's bring you back to Nairobi. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered the release of youth held over the heckling incident in Migori on the 8th of September. Uhuru also said he has nothing against those who heckled him. He spoke as he met Migori leaders led by the governor Okoth Obando, who went to State House to apologize to him. KTN's associate editor Noah Otieno has the details.
Any resident of Migori County who may have been harboring feelings of guilt or shame from the Uhuru heckling incident 2 weeks ago can now sleep easy. President Uhuru Kenyatta says he bears no grudge against them. This was after an apparently successful Migori apology delegation sat down with Uhuru Kenyatta at State House, Nairobi, over the ugly incident on 8th of September.
We are the elders of Migori, are therefore here today to profoundly apologize to you with the utmost humility on behalf of the people of Migori County.
And politically polarized environments which make the idle youth to despair and become vulnerable to misuse by politicians.
You are the president of this great republic, and nobody should think about hindering your movement towards any part of this great republic.
Mimi sina la kusamehe kwa sababu mimi najua na tuliona kutoka tuanze safari yetu ya kwamba wananchi wa Migori hawakuwa na shida.
The head of state also ordered the release of 6 youth charged over the Migori heckling incident, saying they deserve a chance in life.
Politics of hate, division, hooliganism, and intolerance do not belong to the Kenya of the 21st century.
We did not choose Migori County because we wanted to come and play politics. We chose Migori County because it is one of the most...
Your Excellency, you are welcome to Migori County, and tafadhali, okoa Jaluo, okoa Mukuria, okoa Maragoli, and all the people of Migori County.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has maintained a cool demeanor ever since the incident occurred in Migori, even as a cross-section of Kenyans reacted sharply over the heckling. This State House meeting will be seen as another big political score for Uhuru, who has gradually but steadily been taking the war for Nyanza and Western Kenya support to the CORD leader Raila Odinga. Now, KTN Prime.
The Big Q. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and that story is the basis of a big question tonight. We are asking you, do you support the directive to release the Migori youth accused of heckling the president?
Let us know what you think. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya. You can send a direct tweet to Ben_Kitili, and of course at Linda Ogutu. All right, let's take you back to our top story. That story is coming from the county of Bungoma, where a section of Bukusu elders was stopped in the nick of time as they were about to order the killing of a 3-day-old child. Let's understand a little bit more about this now. And we're taking you live to Bungoma County. You're speaking to Wabwoba Walinywa. He's a Bukusu elder. Thank you for speaking to KTN Prime tonight. Why must this child die?
I think the child should not die. The child should be spared. Because first and foremost, life has changed. We cannot continue hanging on all outdated culture. We understand that incest is a very serious matter in society. But I think that it is not a child's mistake, and we cannot end a child's life. However, there are things that have to be done according to Bukusu culture, which would secure future perpetrators of incest and give them some kind of lesson. One, this child can be taken away with modern living, can be taken to some religious organization, can be taken away so that it grows elsewhere. If the relationship, however, is very close, in terms of the mother being very close to the father, then the arrangement should be made so that the mother never meets the child again. But if the relationship are a bit distant, the mother can be allowed to see the child. However, the most important thing is to say that in this modern age of time, 21st century, you cannot end up the life of a child in this case, because it is not the child's mistake that it is here.
But hold on. So what will happen if this child is allowed to leave? What is the fear?
Of course, there is a taboo. There is the fear among the Bukusu that this child will bring bad omen. That would be the not bad omen that will eventually hurt or harm the community. But this has come about because of old days. It is an olden way of thinking, which unfortunately is not there anymore, and we are moving out of it.
Okay, so in such a scenario, who makes the decision as to whether or not this child leaves or dies? Is it the relatives? Is it the village elders? Who makes this decision?
In any community, according to our structures, our Bukusu structures, there are clans, there are clan members, there are community members who will sit down and discuss and find out what to do with a child of this kind. But I definitely want to make clear that the reason to kill the child is not there at all. And that is, I think, a mistaken notion.
Okay, help me to understand something that a lot of people are asking. Which is the greater evil here? I know you've said this has probably been overtaken by time, but which is the greater evil? Killing a child because it's a product of incest, or letting it live? Which one is the greater or lesser evil?
As far as I'm concerned, killing the child is a greater evil. Because as I've stated before, the child has not made any mistake to be here. The child is a product of a mistake, but that cannot make the child a mistake. That's why the child is to be secured and put elsewhere safely and grow up in innocent life.
Finally, before I let you go, so what happens to the parents?
Well, as I've said, first, if the parents are very close of the child, then they will be told never to visit this child again. Let the child go to a children's home or at a care center. But if they are a bit distant, the mother should be allowed to see the child once in a while, because in the final analysis, it is about this child and the future of this child.
All right, it's not really about the custody. It's about, do they get any sort of punishment as parents?
Obviously, there's going to be punishment. We cannot do this. Because to start with, to have incest, is an offense. Even in law, you cannot have an affair with a relative. And our communities also have punishment. They will prescribe what kind of punishment the father and the mother should have. But in that punishment, the child is not definitely one of the people to be punished.
All right, Wabobo Alinywa, Bukusu Elder, thank you so much for sharing your opinion on this particular story from Bungoma County, where a 3-day-old child was supposed to have been killed today. Thank you. Now, the National Assembly leader of majority, Aden Duale's comments are still haunting him. Several leaders have criticized Duale and demanded an apology, but the majority leader is getting some support, with 4 members of parliament insisting that Duale has not done anything wrong. Rita Tinina has more.
Utaki tukuulize maswali.
Aden Duale's remarks on Monday in Narok County, which were targeted at Bomet Governor Isaac Ruto, have put the National Assembly leader of majority on the spot.
Sometimes you wonder whether fellows occupying certain positions really understand the weight of the offices they occupy when you see them in public.
And even as we have different views, I think it is good for people to respect each other, so that even as we differ with sobriety.
Haisaidii hata kidogo wakati viongozi wako na marubano.
Several leaders have demanded an apology from Duale, who maintains he has nothing to apologize for. And now the majority leader is getting some support.
The governor of Bomet County really made this march in Duale, and whatever was given to him was the right prescription for his problem, his attitude and his arrogance. I don't know if it was an overdose.
In a nutshell, what Mr. Duale was telling Mr. Ruto, appear before the Senate, explain yourself. Explain yourself. Failure to do that, what you are trying to do, this thing you are calling pesa mashinani, is simply pesa mashimoni.
The MPs argue that Duale's comments were taken out of context.
I know there was a lot of hulubalu on the use of the word the mamayako. I think the reference was, this is not a private property. This is a public, and as a public property, you must be able to account for it.
When you tell me that money is not your mother's, because my mother's money, I can be able to spend it without explaining to you. But when it's public money, I have to be accountable to the people.
Bomet Governor Isaac Ruto says he is preparing to take legal action against Duale over claims that Governor Ruto cannot account for 185 million shillings and has declined to appear before the Senate to explain the financial operations of Bomet County. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Let's now switch gears, shall we, to some British politics. And should Scotland be an independent country? That is a big question. In fact, that was the referendum question as millions of Scots went to the polls to vote on whether to remain in the UK or become independent. Here is more on this historic vote.
More than 5,000 polling stations opened across Scotland on Thursday morning for a referendum which has electrified the country and could shake the United Kingdom to its core. Should Scotland be an independent country? More than 4 million voters will have to simply answer yes or no. While the no camp has long held the lead, a surge of support for yes in the past 2 weeks has left the vote too close to call. Now the day of destiny has arrived.
I think the bitterness that this divisive campaign has caused is going to last a long, long time. I think it has split Scotland like nothing else in my lifetime.
Yes, families have been divided, but I think it's also been a wonderful democratic process where today possibly 97% of those eligible to vote are going to be turning up to vote.
Leaders for both the yes and no camps made their final pitches to undecided voters on Wednesday. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown made a passionate appeal for Scotland to remain in the UK.
For reasons of solidarity, sharing, justice, pride in Scotland, the only answer for Scotland's sake and for Scotland's future is vote no.
US President Barack Obama tweeted on Wednesday that he too hoped the UK would remain united. In contrast, the yes camp received a late boost when tennis star Andy Murray threw his weight behind independence. With polls showing the narrowest of leads for the no's, Scottish National Party chief Alex Salmond could yet be the man that ends Scotland's 300-year-old union with England.
We have the opportunity, we have the chance to create a more prosperous economy, certainly, but also to create a fairer society. We want to wake up on Friday morning, the first day of creating a better country. Wake up knowing we did this, we made it happen.
With turnout predicted to exceed 80%, the vote will be a once-in-a-lifetime verdict on Scotland's place in the United Kingdom. Results are due early on Friday morning. Supporters on both sides will face a nervous wait throughout the night.
Big vote there for Scotland, indeed, a big wait for the whole of Great Britain. Now let's take you back a couple of centuries back, and Scotland emerged in the medieval times as a separate kingdom from England, and it survived for 800 years before the two merged in 1707. Let's take a look at what would happen if the yes proponents were to have their way. Now, Scotland, the UK would lose 8.3% of its population, and with that, a lot of economic earnings would go along with that. Scotland gets a tenth of North Sea oil. That is the biggest question of what would happen. Now, 75% of the European Union's offshore oil comes from the United Kingdom, and 90% of that comes from Scottish waters. And apart from that, there is tidal and wind potential that could go up to 25% according to calculations. That is for all the production in the European Union. That is what the UK would lose in terms of the economy that comes from the oil industry. Now let's take a look at what the Scottish economy contributes to the British economy. It contributes £100 billion every year to the treasury in London. And 11 billion of that comes from financial services, which comes, of course, to give the importance of the more than 5.3 million people of Scotland. And 9% of that comes from revenues from food and drink. That includes the famous Scottish whisky. And of course, it is not clear what would happen to the pound. The Scots have not said if they will continue to use the pound or not. And another thing that will be a big headache for London will be the military. There is a Trident system that is used by London. That is a number of submarines, nuclear-armed submarines that are anchored in Scotland. It is not clear what would happen. Now, if the yes proponents that have been pushing for the referendum for the independence of Scotland are to have their way, this will herald the biggest and most dramatic constitutional change in Britain since the two countries merged in 1707. According to projections, they have said that we will be knowing what the vote is by breakfast time in Britain. That is around 7:30 British Standard Time tomorrow. Linda.
Indeed, when lots of focus on that referendum. Let's see how it goes. We're keeping an eye on it for you. The minute the results are out, we'll let you know. Now, in tonight's episode of our continuing special coverage of the first anniversary of the Westgate attack, Ian Wafula reports on the Pumwani Riyadh Mosque. Are the youth there at risk of being recruited into the Al-Shabaab, or has the mosque been wrongly accused of supporting the Somali militia group? Take a look.
Foundations of Pumwani Riyadh Mosque, right at the capital, date back to almost a century ago. Years later, Pumwani Riyadh Mosque rose to become one of Kenya's most controversial mosques, dogged by allegations of radicalization, financing and recruitment of youth into the Al-Shabaab militia group. But the stories told through the personal experiences of Isa Mungai and Mohammed Abdi perhaps gives insight into the Pumwani Riyadh Mosque, which many people would otherwise never know. Riyadh Mosque was set up in the nearby slums of Majengo. Poverty and unemployment were rife, with the presence of a huge population of idle youth. It was later that Muslim Youth Center, MYC, was established. Its aim was to create a positive influence to the youth economically and through Islamic charity work. Adjacent was a piece of land belonging to the mosque. Income generated from businesses set up on it was what the clerics used to support the over 200 young men under MYC. But according to residents and Sheikh Abdul Hussein, a deal between the mosque and developers turned sour, and that was the beginning of the fall of the Muslim Youth Center.
Nani watu wawili ama watatu wanasema hicho kiwanja ni chao. Sisi tumetoa vijana wetu zaidi ya vijana 200 kwa hiyo kiwanja na walitoka na amani.
And just like that, the sole purpose of MYC crumbled. Majority of the youth in the area were now idle, vulnerable and prime targets for terror groups such as Al-Shabaab back in Somalia.
Waanzilishi ama ambao walianzilisha walipoamua kwenda kule walikoenda, ikakuwa sasa MYC imekuwa branded kama a terrorist group. So hapo na hapo ikakufa.
Sasa hawa vijana walipokosa kazi, wengine maskini ya Mungu wenye roho dhaifu wakaingilia wizi, wengine wakaamua sasa mbaya wakaamua kwenda walikokwenda, Yani ni matatizo moja kwa mbili kwa kukosa ajira. Mtu una mke ndani ya nyumba, una watoto, wanataka kula, wanataka nini, utafanya nini?
The United Nations Security Council Monitoring Group on Eritrea and Somalia released a report in 2011 stating that the mosque was funding Al-Shabaab while Muslim Youth Center was responsible for the recruitment. Some members like Abdi Mohammed were labeled as financiers of the terror group, a claim that leaders here refuted.
Sasa mi just wonder, mi hata sijui yani sijuta finance. Mimi mwenyewe kukula yenyewe saa zingine ni matatizo. The finance group called Shabab. It's very sad.
Vijana wakakutana tena, wakaamua nasari, watoto hata hawaji kwa sababu imekuwa branded na nini na MYC. Ikakuwa itwa Al-Hijra. Na Al-Hijra si group ya vijana, Al-Hijra ni nasari.
But even after rebranding the school to Al-Hijra, claims that money were being channeled to Al-Shabaab through the school's account were rife. It was rebranded to what is now the Pumwani Ridhaya Mosque Integrated Academy.
Ukitizama kuna kiwanja hapa za kufundisha watu kweli mambo ya terrorism. Hamna nafasi. Kwa hivyo hizi tunaweza sema ni propaganda ambazo zinaenezwa na hatusemi kwamba sisi ni wasafi. Tunajua kwamba miongoni mwetu kunaweza kuwa na wachache ambao wako na ideology tofauti, na kama mwenzangu alivyosema ni jukumu la serikali na kuangalia kwamba ni nani husika, nani anaenda kinyume na matakwa ya serikali ama.
The majority of the youth in the report were either arrested or disappeared mysteriously, while others like Isa and Abdi were left to face stigmatization.
Ningeomba wafanye investigation, proper investigation. Si leo mimi niko na chuki na wewe na kimbia shauri moyo pa police station naenda kusema wale ni Al-Shabaab. Then the following day unakuja kushikwa pending investigation. Wewe sasa unashikwa ndio investigation inaanza.
Problem ni kwamba vijana wakijaribu kuanzisha kitu yote bora ni Waislamu. Scrutiny inakuwa ya hali ya juu. Allegations zinaanza kuja. Vijana wanaachana nayo.
Kuna wengi wamerudi, hata saizi wanaosha magari, mnaweza hata kuona kwenye parking ya msikiti tumewawachia. Waweze kuosha hiyo magari wapi? Kwenye hii parking ya msikiti. Hata vijana wakipark gari waoshe, waangalie hiyo gari, malipo tunawawachia wao kusudi wasifanye uovu.
While the questions concerning youth radicalization across Kenya's porous borders continue to pile up, Abdi, Isa and the rest of the members of the barely surviving Muslim Youth Center distanced themselves from the accusations and branding. Ian Wafula, KTN.
Our special coverage after the siege continues tomorrow indeed through to the weekend, culminating in the Nairobi edition of the KTN Bottom Line. That is on Saturday and Sunday.
Make a date with us. Now, you remember our top story, that story from Bungoma County about a 3-day-old child that was supposed to be killed. Lots of you are talking about it. At Martin Okango says, that kid is innocent, the mom is a minor, the dad should take the stroke, spare the child's life. Patrick Alushula says, 2 wrongs never made a right. The poor Bukusu baby deserves to live, but society reminded of need to uphold morals. Remember, our hashtag tonight is poor Bukusu baby. Let us know what you think about that story, and we'll see if we can follow it up in the next coming days. Now, our big question tonight focuses on that trip by Migori leaders who came to Nairobi to apologize to the president. And we're asking you, do you support the directive to release Migori youth accused of heckling the president? That happened today. He actually pardoned them.
Yeah, you can also join that particular conversation on the SMS line 22155 and on Twitter at Ben_Kitili, at Linda Ogutu, and at KTN Kenya. Shall be sampling those views. For now, we'll take a quick break. Don't go too far. We'll be back shortly with more.
Stay with us. And the fate of school children caught in the crossfire of Wajir clan fighting.
You're watching KTN Prime.
Welcome back to the program.
Now, traffic along the Kisii-Keroka Road was halted for the better part of today as angry protesters scattered a mobile court.
The protesters included enraged touts, taxi drivers and the border riders hurled stones and exchanged fierce words with officials.
They accused magistrates and the traffic police of corruption at the mobile court.
The charged crowd brought down tents and police road signs, prompting an exchange with the police.
The protesters say that they are fed up with the judiciary's move to place hefty fines on them, even on petty traffic offences. Some police officers were injured during that exchange.
Kila wakati koti iko kwa kaunti hii, kila wakati hatujui ni nini wanatafuta, hatujui ni pesa wanataka iko mingi pande hii, hatujui ni ile kitu wanataka ni nini.
Kama uko na makosa utaweza kukubali upiwe faini, lakini ile faini yenye unapigwa kama umenunua mguu ya gari kama hizi mataxi zetu ni shilingi 3,500 4,000, alafu wewe mwenyewe unapigwa hiyo faini eti ya mguu moja 10,000 ama 20,000. Pikipiki inauzwa 60,000 65,000. Jameni, ukipiga pikipiki 100,000 unataka huyu jamaa aendelee ama asiendelee?
Moving away from that, persistent inter-clan clashes has been a big problem for the communities living in Wajir County. And Butehelu school children have been unable to go to school due to the insecurity. And for 4 months, they have been out of school, being constantly on the run with their families in search of safety. Sharon Momanyi now reports on the unfortunate situation.
Smoke billows from a traditional jiko outside a temporary camp in Butehelu, Wajir County. But not much is cooking for this community who are constantly on the run due to insecurity in the area. Not especially for the children here, the constant risk of attacks making it impossible for them to go to school.
This school is closed since May due to insecurity. I'm wondering why the national government is abdicating its role. Security is a national mandate.
At the Butehelu Primary School, the chirping of birds is the only sound. Locked doors and books scattered on the desks and floors, the only sight. Since May, no learning has been taking place here. The children do not come to school. There are only 3 teachers in the school, which has more than 300 pupils. All 3 of them do not belong to the warring clans.
Wakati wa vita tuna shida nyingi kwa sababu kwanza hatuelewi lugha ya hapa. Tunasatukia asubuhi kila mtu ametoroka, tumeachwa. Hakuna barabara, hakuna vile tunaweza kutoroka, hakuna gari.
Even as the teachers make effort to teach the pupils about different communities and heritage, inter-clan clashes remain a big hindrance to education here.
Fortunately, the Ministry of Education is yet to fund the boarding school, the boarding wing. This is supposed to be a low-cost boarding school, which is to be funded by the Ministry of Education.
Sasa hiyo mambo ya security imetupatia changamoto kuu. Na tungeuliza tu tupate security hapa, at least tungekuwa nafasi bora katika kufanya jukumu letu la walimu.
As if their homelessness is not a problem enough, their school, meant to be the key to a better future, is insecure and understaffed. The community's plea is that authorities would intervene for sustainable peace and a chance to get education that would be a ray of hope. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
Good evening, I'm Joy Doreen Bira. The Kenya Shilling continued with its downward slide in today's trade despite efforts by the central bank to shore it up. The shilling closed the day's trade at 89 shillings and 17 cents against the dollar, fluctuating close to a 2-year low. Now, the local currency had earlier weakened due to dollar demand from the oil and retail sectors, continuing a steady decline since last week and a pressure from importers against scant hard currency inflows. The central bank stepped in during the day's trade, selling an undisclosed amount of dollars that lifted the shilling that at one point hit 89.50 against the dollar. But dollar supply has been low in the last few months given lower earnings from the tourism sector and tea sales following global oversupply. In a statement, CBK says its foreign exchange reserves are up $1.1 billion from last month, standing at $7.4 billion or 4.85 months months of import cover. And now taking a look at Uchumi chain of supermarkets has cleared its debt with the government after paying 33 million shillings it owed to Treasury for the loan extended to it in 2006 to fund its restructuring and turnaround strategy. The government, which owns 16% stake in Uchumi, had loaned 407 million shillings, and today's repayment is the final installment by the supermarket as it charts a new growth strategy following dipping profits. KTN's Charles Gitonga with the details.
Uchumi supermarket has now fully settled the loan advanced to it by government 8 years ago to fund its turnaround strategy. The supermarket paid 33 million shillings to the Treasury as the final installment of a loan, following 8 years of growth and profitability. In total, it has paid 675 million shillings due to interest accumulated over the time.
And we were left with only the government, and we have a check that we are clearing, and that is the final check of 33 million shillings.
While receiving the payment check, Treasury CS Henry Rotich said Uchumi has proven its worth by paving way to recovery over the years.
You know, people who honor their debts definitely means that they have done very well.
The payment comes at a time when the retail chain is planning to offer 100 million shares for rights issue next month. The new capital, it says, will be invested in its massive expansion program.
The other one in Uganda, we have 2 that are coming, and Tanzania we have 5 coming, including areas in Tanzania that had never seen a supermarket before.
The payment to the government brings to 303 million shillings, the amount of money the National Treasury has received from various state corporations today in form of loan repayments and dividends. Among them is Postal Corporation, which has submitted 17.3 million shillings in dividends for the first time since 1999. Insurance company Kenya Re, in which the government owns 60% stake, has submitted 252 million shillings as dividends for the 2013-2014 financial year, where it made 3 billion shillings in profits. The government is targeting to raise 9.6 billion shillings in dividends from various corporations within this financial year. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
Mismanagement, corruption, failure to pay retirees on time. These are just but a handful of terms that have in the past been used to describe the National Social Security Fund. Its storied past has done little to convince savers that an increase in the monthly savings will give workers a decent life after retirement. But NSSF is now asking for a chance to prove its past is behind it and give the new rates a chance to work. Aden Duale reports.
The National Social Security Fund is famous, but for all the wrong reasons. The firm has been dogged by tales of grand corruption, mismanagement, and a host of inefficiencies, costing people money and subjecting pensioners in the country to old age poverty. As such, when the new Act 2013, which seeks to change NSSF from a provident fund to a pension scheme and increase contributions from both employers and employees was passed, it brought into question the ability of NSSF to prudently manage the larger portfolio, estimated at 15 billion shillings a month, given its paltry performance so far.
Do we need a national pension scheme? How should it be funded? The public can ask, how then should this new entity be administered?
Knowing that it needs to change this perception, the fund is asking for an opportunity to prove that the rates are going to be beneficial come retirement. For example, NSSF says it has achieved significant gains by reducing its administration costs to 3% this year and unveiling plans to reduce this to less than 2% by the next budget.
In containing that percentage, one is to increase our asset base so that the 2% becomes sustainable. Another one is to cut costs. So we'll use a combination of both.
And unlike the past, NSSF is also required to procure the services of qualified fund managers to invest their funds and cap investment in the different asset classes to no more than 30%. This has seen NSSF post significant gains in its asset base that has grown to 152 billion shillings as of June this year. This has allowed NSSF to increase interest paid to members tenfold to 12.5%. But is this new dispensation enough to erase the memories of the past for NSSF? Only time will tell. Aden Duale, KTN Business.
Now on to technology. Smartphones are fast becoming the most convenient communication devices for Kenyans. There were approximately 4.3 million smartphones in the country by the end of 2013 compared to 1.3 million 2 years earlier. But even with this, Kenyans are yet to experience value addition that comes with high-end handheld devices. Kenya's smartphone penetration currently stands at 67%, with 100,000 smartphones being purchased each month, and market players believe that with increased localized products like online access to health and business content, the older generation, still pegged in older handsets, will catch up with the trend. Increased uptake of smartphones as a result of tech-savvy middle-class manufacturers like Samsung say gives room for locally invented content features. Kenyans largely use smartphones for social value with applications like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp and YouTube. And while up to 12 million Kenyans can afford smartphones, market players are now targeting the older generation through promotions to deepen decent smartphone penetration that currently retail between 4,000 and 65,000 Kenya shillings.
Generation, the students are leading in this, but the people who have resources are working class people, businessmen, executives, but far too often many of them do not embrace technology. They sponsor it, they have the resources, but they don't embrace technology.
We intend to help the Kenyan subscribers upgrade their use of technology into smartphones especially.
There are more user-friendly apps and basically, I mean, I'm not one of those gadgety people. For me, I just use it for calling, for texting, WhatsApp, and the internet.
And we're now also seeing the entrance of French firm Wiko that is also introducing smartphones into the Kenyan market. Let's take a look at how your money worked for you today.
Financial Report, brought to you by KCB Home Loans.
We got 105% mortgage from KCB.
It covered all our costs. Deposit, legal fees, duty, everything. We've seen an apartment, but go to KCB.
Send money go home with 105% financing from KCB. Available in over 175 branches countrywide. KCB, making the difference.
And that's it for KTN Business. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Coming up next is KTN Sports with KTN's Lynn Washira.
And to some not very good news, Kenya's early elimination from the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations has already had a negative effect on the country's World FIFA rankings. Kenya dropped 7 places from position 104 last month to the current 111th position. Countries that performed well in their home and away group matches of the 2015 Nations Cup qualifiers moved up the ladder. Algeria, for instance, moved 4 positions to occupy top spot in the continent, while defending champions Nigeria climbed 4 places to land on position 6 in Africa. And keeping it football, KCB will miss the services of defenders Bethel Warambo and Marco Thiambo in Saturday's Premier League clash against struggling AFC Leopards. The Bankers coach Rishadi Shedu is hopeful that those he will pick on Saturday will help the club garner maximum points and move away from the relegation zone.
The 2014 season has been a tough one for Bankers KCB. As opposed to yesteryears, the Rocker-based outfit has struggled week in, week out. But since joining the club, coach Rishadi Shedu has tried to turn around the heavily funded club. But 6 victories in 24 matches is what the Bankers have recorded in their books.
most of the time wao huwa wanachukua wachezaji wazuri sana, then in between sekati ya leg wanakosa wachezaji. So mimi I believe I'm ambitious. Sinaona siwezi kubali because kitambo right now kunazo pesa ambao weza retain wachezaji wako.
Kila game ni kama tu finali juu hatujatoka kwa noma bado. Mpaka tutang'atu mpaka dakika ya mwisho.
Currently, KCB lies at position 14 with 22 points out of 24 matches, and this weekend, KCB will take on AFC Leopards, who are placed 12th. The absence of his dependable fullbacks, Bethel Arambo and Marco Dhiambo, is giving Richard sleepless nights. The technical bench takes solace in the fact that out of 5 matches, KCB has only conceded 1 goal with wins over City Stars, KRA and Ulinzi Stars.
Position FC Leopards si nzuri at this particular moment and time, and then going to the last game walishindwa again.
KCB and AFC Leopards played to a 1-1 draw in the first leg at the Mumia Sports Complex. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
And away from football, the third edition of the ZUKU Universities Basketball League throws off this Saturday at the Nyala National Stadium Gymnasium. Miles and Associates International, who are organizing the competition that runs until March next year, says the top 4 teams will proceed to conference playoffs games on March 14th, 2015 and March 21st, 2015.
A lot of other universities have now come into the league. I think we have 13 additional institutions that have signed up to compete this year, and yeah, we're set for 6 months of exciting basketball and a lot of young players that have been sitting and waiting and anxiously waiting to get started again.
East Africa Championship still, which will happen on the 19th, 20th of October, and we have our biggest other event in Eldoret, which happens on 22nd and 23rd of November.
And well, FC Porto were the biggest winners last night as they pumped in 6 unreplied goals in Bate Boribo's net in one of the UEFA Champions League matches. Jerome Boateng scored a last-minute winner to deny Manchester City a point in the opening Champions League group game.
There's been lots of reaction on that hashtag, poor Bukusu Baby. Super Mario at A. Ogea says, it said whoever hasn't seen to cast the first stone, let the child grow to maturity. Andafu_Dick says, everybody has a right to live. Kevin Wabogo says, it is sad that the baby will not survive. That is a core belief of the Bukusu. It has no place in the community. And finally, Patrick Alushula says, 2 wrongs never made a right. The poor Bukusu baby deserves to live, but society should be reminded of the need to uphold morals.
I have to read this from Chris Amwai. Says, hashtag poor Bukusu baby can grow to become an MCA, MP, senator or governor, or even marry an Asian, like hashtag my Bukusu darling.
We thank you for participating in our big question, and of course that hashtag poor Bukusu baby. Keep tweeting us. We'll look at that story and see how far we can go to help this child. Thank you for watching KTN Prime. I'm Linda Ogutu. Have a good weekend.
Yes, indeed. Many thanks for being with us all through this week on KTN Prime. My name is Ben Kitili. Good night from the KTN News Center.